So Melissa, we're so thrilled that you could be here as our keynote speaker for the Healthy Women, Healthy World luncheon this year. And you may know by now, looking at medical teams and our work around the world, that we really prioritize empowering communities, especially women. And I'm just curious, in terms of what you have seen in refugee camps around the world about that approach, and if it makes sense to be trying to empower the refugees themselves.
Yeah, well, first of all, Martha, I'm so honored to be speaking here at your event, and I hope that your organization, Medical Teams, gets huge support, the support it deserves, because you're doing amazing work in the field.
Thank you.
Our approach to refugee response has changed a lot, and it's encompassed in what's going to be the Global Compact on Refugees, which is about to be adopted by the UN General Assembly.
Right.
And what it says is exactly what you just suggested, that we are no longer just going to, put refugees in this situation of dependency. Rather, we're going to empower them with the abilities to rebuild their own lives. I mean, generally, that's exactly what they want to do. They need survival support, basic survival.
Sure.
But then they need the tools to rebuild their lives themselves. And I think women in particular are extremely important to this equation.
Yeah, so agree. And that's why I'm so thrilled that you chose to tell Doaa's story, which is just such a heartbreaking and yet somehow hopeful story. And tell us a little bit about, why did you choose to tell her story the way that you did, or even her story at all?
Well, there is this saying that statistics are human beings with the tears dried off. So my approach as head of communications for UNHCR is, of course I have to talk about the statistics, 68.5 million people. I wish I could tell 68.5 million stories of forcibly displaced people, because each and every one of them are extraordinary, and they're riveting and they're stirring. But Doaa's story, when I discovered it, for me, it encapsulates the entire refugee experience in one human being. And so I really think that by telling Doaa's story, the story of one remarkable young woman who also, who survives a lot against all odds, but she also even manages to save a little baby. And people feel so much empathy towards Doaa, towards the small baby that was saved. And once they're feeling this empathy, they want to learn more about the bigger picture. So that's why.
Oh, that's great. And in fact, that was the next thing I really wanted to ask you was because of this crisis that you've mentioned, this global refugee crisis with 68.5 million people who have either fled for their lives or been displaced, what can we do? I mean, I think sometimes we feel so just overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of this crisis. And so I love the fact that you're zeroing in on Doaa, one person, but what can we do to be part of the solution?
Well, I mean, I think what you're doing, frankly, you're doing a lot, and it really makes me, it moves me a lot to be at this luncheon and to see what a huge number of people in the community in Portland and also in Seattle want to be here, want to know, want to learn, but also want to contribute. And I think, we have to, as people who work for organizations, the biggest refugee response organization, and you a smaller, very effective one, we need to give people the tools to help, because I genuinely think and believe that as soon as they get the information and they hear the stories, that they want to do something.
That's right.
And so here, I mean, you're giving them an opportunity, to contribute to your organization. And that in turn is helping a large number of people.
True. So thank you, Melissa, for being with us, and we're just so grateful.
Well, thank you for having me. Thanks.